And welcome to this episode of Season 3 of the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and often guests, as we have today, talk about digital topics, including the world of online communications and digital inclusion, in a show which was the brainchild of digital storyteller, the late John Popham. So, as we usually do, we start with a weather check. So, welcome to our special guest, Siobhan Harper-Nunes. Siobhan, how has the weather been this week where you are?
It's absolutely glorious, and there's a slight chill of breeze in the air, so it's not too hot.
Perfect. Good. And where are you?
I'm in Birmingham. I was going to say I'm in my backyard, but I was last night. It was lovely with the grandchildren and the water slide. So yes,
gorgeous,
it was glorious.
Gorgeous. And Sweyn, what about yourself? Where are you, and what's the weather like there?
Well, after my travels to Glasgow and Aberdeen last week, I'm back in Kirkwall in Orkney again, and I was about to say it's lovely and sunny, but as I said that, the breeze has picked up and it's become overcast. So we had a bit of rain yesterday, which was very welcome, but we're having the same fabulously warm and sunny weather that everyone else is having, with perhaps just a little bit less temperature for us.
Cool. Yes, I'm also in Birmingham, like Siobhan. In fact, I drove past her offices only about an hour ago. And the weather, it's definitely, the temperature's dropped a little bit, but it was like 18 still in the garden last night. And I'd say it's well in the 20s today in Birmingham, where I am. So that's really nice to see. So Siobhan, before we get to you, we've got some dates and events to go through. So if you bear with us, and we'll get to you imminently. We're very excited about having you on the show. So Sweyn, do you want to lead off with the dates, please?
Sure. The first thing we've picked to recognise today is actually a date that happened last week, and it is the United Nations Public Service Day, and this celebrates the contribution to society by all nations, army of public service workers, from nurses to teachers, firefighters to administrators. Britain was asked to join in this year on the 23rd of June, which was, I think, Friday. The day was officially launched by the United Nations as long ago as 2003, but has barely been recognised so far in the UK. But public sector membership club Boundless wanted to change that this year and put the country's public service workers in the spotlight. The UN Public Service Day celebrates the value and virtue of public services to the community, highlights the contribution of public service in the development process, recognises the work of public servants, and encourages young people to pursue careers in the public sector. So all good stuff. Since the first award ceremony in 2003, the United Nations has received an increasing number of submissions for their award scheme that's associated with the day from all around the world. So whether that is the nurse who looked after you in a hospital, the police officer who came to your rescue, the midwife who delivered your babies, the civil servant at the job centre who goes the extra mile, or the teacher who inspired you or your children, it's time to let them know they're appreciated. So that's Public Sector Day. So
that's really nice. Yeah, I mean, we had all that clapping for nurses and public sector workers during the pandemic, which may or may not have paid the bills. Personally, applause doesn't pay any of my bills, but anyway, and all of us have worked in the public sector. All of us on screen have worked in the public sector, so we're aware of the important work that public sector workers do, and often thankless, and the blame they get for things that are not their fault at all. Siobhan, I know you can speak to that from previous experience in council and me in the same council in Birmingham, and yourself, Sweyn, in your previous career. Siobhan, have you got good memories of being a public sector worker?
Most definitely, and you were just taking me back to the clapping. I think we should do that all year round, because I often think we moan when something goes wrong, and we make a very big hoo-ha about that, but we take for granted the amount of time and effort public sector workers put in to make sure most of the time things run smoothly. And I was just imagining, as you were talking, I think it was the 80s when the bin men went on strike, and the how things just were horrible. And yet we take for granted the fact that they're there consistently. The same with our nurses, the same with just the woman who was on the phone a couple of weeks ago to me to sort out a parking permit issue. She She was so helpful. It was untrue. But there's no way to thank them. There's a complaints department, but there's not a praise department. I say we should have a praise department for all the public service workers that actually deserve to be praised daily.
I think that many local authorities, at least now, will have whatever the opposite of a complaint is included in the system. I know that Orkney Islands Council here does. It presents complaints and it's not called compliments.
Comments and compliments, yeah.
Yes, but it's some more positive word than comment even in that bit of the website. So I think that needs. You're right, Siobhan. That needs to be taken up by those who have not yet got there.
Absolutely. Anyway, we'll press on because we want to get on to talk to you, Siobhan, and make the most of your time. Sorry, Sweyn, carry on.
No, to keep me going. The next story that we had, the next date that we had to mark was also last week. You can tell we did a special event last week and didn't have any stories. This time it's Day of the Seafarer 2023. Now, as an island dweller, I'm constantly surrounded by the sea, obviously, and by the people sailing on it and helping us out, helping society out, and doing things that are useful. So yesterday, in fact, Sunday was the Day of the Seafarer, which is an annual and international event day coordinated by the International Maritime Association. And the day recognizes the unique and vital role of seafarers in the global community. And this is recognized by the United Nations as an observance day, like many of the ones that we mention. So the day was established in 2010 by a resolution adopted at a diplomatic conference in Manila, which revised the International Covenant on Standards of Training, Certification and Watchkeeping for Seafarers. I think that's a great name for a convention, but there we are. STCW for short. And the original convention was to ensure an international standard of competency and welfare for seafarers, for their safety, and the revision was to ensure the upholding of the Day of the Seafarer as part of that. And the convention's aim is to recognise the contribution by seafarers to society and economy globally. So the day encourages international public and official conversation about seafarers and seafaring, and the well-being of seafarers, and there's an interactive media, encourages that too. Relating to the Day of the Seafarer has proved extremely popular around the world. For example, quizzes, interactive maps, videos, photo galleries, and so on and so on. And the day aims to see events run in ports and seafarer centres as well as online, which is really important because although internet access at sea is a bit better than it used to be a few years ago, it's still quite patchy. So this year the theme is in line with the World Maritime theme, which is MARPOL at 50. Our commitment goes on. MARPOL is the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships, and is the main international convention covering prevention of pollution at sea. Seafarers spend a great deal of time at sea and are a big part of the solution when it comes to protecting the marine environment. And as part of the campaign, seafarers were asked to share a picture of the marine environment surrounding them while at sea, highlighting that the marine environment is worth protecting. And the 2023 campaign hashtag is still #OceansWorthProtecting. And there's some great pictures there, which I'll not share because I spent a bit too long on this one already, possibly. But comments?
Well, it seems we've gone from the sublime to the ridiculous. You're the sublime, Sweyn, because you're surrounded by the sea. And we're in Birmingham, which is landlocked and as far from the sea as you can probably get, and which I miss desperately and love when I go to Ireland and I can be in and near the sea again. And Siobhan, I know you love being near the sea and water as well as a water baby.
Definitely a water baby. And you've just reminded me when I returned to Guyana, the place of my birth, spending many a happy evening on the Demerara River, but also walking along the sea wall, watching the sea crash against this glorious sea wall. But sadly, whenever I think of sea today, as a climate activist, I think about the 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic
absolutely
in there. And you know, while I totally commend the work of the maritime workers. I just wonder, what will we ever do to, one, stop further polluting, but also to reverse some of the damage we've already done, that is having an impact on our climate.
Absolutely.
So yes,
I mean,
it makes me slightly sad.
Yeah.
Plastic pollution is the thing that really, I've seen it increase with my own eyes at the beaches around where I live here. And it's just at least one, maybe two orders of magnitude worse than it was even 10 or 15 years ago. And we have currents and things deposited from ocean currents from all over the world where I am here. It's not just that the tide goes in and out, the currents bring things all around the world. And I agree with you, it's important to avoid despair, but sometimes it's hard to. Yeah. So moving on. Sorry, interrupting. Carry on.
No, that's fine. I realise we've got to move on, but I had another comment
No,
about
go ahead,
just sometimes you think personally, as you hold a bottle of plastic in your hand and think about taking it to the recycle centre. Most people I know think, what's the point? Simply because they feel that the damage that has been done has been done. And my feeling is that until government takes really strong action on this and explaining to people what they can and can't do, the emphasis has always been on the individual to do simple things like recycle when it's not an individual problem, it's a global problem.
I could not agree with you more.
We address this at every level.
It needs to be led by governments and international agreements. It does not need to be all put back onto consumers and individuals. Absolutely agree with that. Absolutely.
And just to add one remark from our kind of regular people who have appeared on the show before, Madeleine Sugden, who we've had as a guest before, tweeted on the 20th of June that she is looking to beach or community cleanup groups for a new article if they help inspire or organise people to tidy up their local area. Do you campaign to stop littering or show the impact of it? Who should I talk to? So if you know anybody who's involved in beach or community cleanup groups, please contact Madeleine Sugden. She's on Twitter as Madeleine Sugden, MADLINSUDN. Very easy to find, and we'd commend that to you.
I think one of the awareness weeks, I think it is, that I skipped over, that I chose not to feature, was actually International Beach Clean Day or Week. But I decided that I liked the IMO one better because it was an international convention rather than constantly asking individuals to take action, which is important too, but it's not as effective if the governments aren't doing their bit. So we move on to the third and final event. Date, which we've picked up this week, and it is World Female Ranger Week, which is run again. I'm sorry, I lost my place slightly. Here we go. Yes, it's launched by adventurer Holly Budge, and we are actually in this week for one. So we're actually in this one. So adventurer Holly Budge, she launched the week to amplify the impact of female wildlife rangers on a global stage. This groundbreaking global awareness week is spearheaded by the international NGO How Many Elephants, HME, and it celebrates and supports female wildlife rangers. They're bold, changing the game and paving the way for women to stand alongside men at the forefront of conversation, but they need allies. The pioneering World Female Ranger Week includes online and live events at the worldfemalerangerweek.org website. And Holly Budge says, having patrolled with multiple ranger teams in Africa and seen firsthand how these bold women are impacting lives, protecting wildlife, uplifting communities, empowering other women, WFRW, the week, highlights the significant gender imbalance in environmental conservation. My team and I will continue collating gender-specific data about female rangers globally, enabling us to identify their needs, find tangible solutions, and help build effective policies to contribute towards positive outcomes for female rangers and conservation as a whole. And as champions of wildlife conservation, as role models, as educators and beacons of hope, female rangers are transforming attitudes towards the role of women around the world, and they're showing the capabilities and success of females in traditionally male roles. However, less than 11% of the global wildlife ranger workforce is female, with women being natural communicators, protectors, and investing their earned income in their families. Bringing gender equality into the workforce enhances community conservation efforts and relationships. And over the last 2 years, the pandemic has crippled tourism and funding for conservation projects globally, and the lack of tourists visiting national parks has led to many rangers losing their jobs or having significant salary cuts. And the knock-on effect of this is huge. For example, one ranger in Africa may support up to 16 family members. Additionally, reduced vigilance in tourist hotspots has left wildlife even more vulnerable to poaching. There's a lot more detail about that on the website there. And for updates, follow at World Female Ranger Week on Instagram and Facebook, or at Female Ranger Week, just with the EE missing out of week, on Twitter, because it's 15 characters, or use the hashtag World Female Ranger Week. And that's the third date that we're marking this week.
Well, obviously, anything about empowering women is in Siobhan's wheel. There's a word about that, isn't there? Anyway, Siobhan's kind of raison d'etre is about empowering women. So yeah, we'll certainly hear more about that. Siobhan, we'll just got one more event to cover, and then I'll come on to you and introduce you as you deserve to be introduced. So please bear with us. So the one event that we have mentioned before, but we wanted to give it another plug because it's at the end of this week, Saturday and Sunday, the 1st and 2nd of July, is Open Data Camp 8.
Hooray!
Following several years kind of when we didn't have an Open Data Camp because of the lockdown and pandemic, we did have an Open Data Cafe, which Sweyn and I were both involved in, but this is an in-person event in Wolverhampton this weekend coming. It's a 2-day weekend event entirely devoted to open data, loosely following the unconference format. We're going to Wolverhampton because we've been offered a wonderful venue, the Springfield campus by the University of Wolverhampton, the School of Mathematics and Engineering. It's a modern building, so we're hoping for good levels of accessibility and communication for all attendees. And you know, we've traveled around the country to run these events. The last one we had in person was in London, so we didn't have the first one in London, was in Winchester. So we have traveled, including to Northern Ireland. We had a wonderful event in Belfast some years ago. We haven't done any of these for a while, but I've been involved in helping to organise this one, and we are committed to the importance of open data and providing a safe and inclusive space for discussing the good, bad, and frustrating parts of our collective efforts in the community. So that's my weekend all lined up. As you can imagine, it's getting very busy now with kind of finalising catering and sponsors and accommodation and all the rest of it. But
None of these are things you have
really
to do on
good.
an online event, of course. But anyway,
No. So
I think you had one in Cardiff as well, didn't you? In Wales.
We've done
I think there was quite a lot of online stuff for that one, which I followed along quite happily. So yeah, hope
so
that all goes really well. Best
usual
wishes to
hashtag
everyone.
OD camp.
Yeah,
brilliant. And our usual graphic designers, journalism are going to be there drawing and live vlogging. So we're hoping to have lots of great content coming out of that. Okay, lastly, we come on to our very, very special guest and my friend Siobhan Harper-Nunes, who's the founder of Shakti Women, a proud Brummie, a beautiful Black woman, everyday activist, lover of life, joy seeker, space shaper, miracle maker, and green to the core. Siobhan founded Shakti Women, an organization dedicated to continuous personal and professional development of women and girls. She was inspired by a speech by Desmond Tutu in 2006, who said, "Women are the key to addressing our world challenges." He said, "Until women take up the mantle of leadership, the future of our planet is at risk." She's the founder of She in 2022 because space and space maintenance brings her joy. She's also vice chair of BRIG, Birmingham Race Impact Group, because all sectors need to dismantle the structural racism in our society. She's also currently the membership officer for the Green Party because climate change is real and yet not a top priority of Labour or Conservatives. Siobhan is a community activist. She says, to stand by whilst others ruin our people, our neighbourhoods, our cities, and our planet is against everything I stand for. It's time for change, and it's time we took control. She wants to see more women, more young people, and more diversity in the governance of our communities and cities. She joined Brig, she says, because racism is an ugly blight in our society, our community and our economy, and it's taking the lives, mental health and dignity of our people. She wants to see Birmingham be an anti-racist city. To get this right, she says, we might just manage some of the other isms. And she became a Green Party activist because she wants all of us to be able to live in a safe, clean and green neighbourhood where we and our children can breathe clean air. Her kind of strapline is to seek and find miracles in the everyday. It's what gets her out of bed. So we're glad you got out of bed for us this morning, Siobhan. Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome.
Well, welcome. I don't know where you got all that information about me, but I loved it. Who is this woman? I'd love to meet her.
As usual, I mind your LinkedIn. So
on which note,
really...
I'll just share your LinkedIn page, because that's one way.
Oh my goodness! Don't.
Oh well, I'll not then.
List. Refresh my LinkedIn.
No. But if people want to contact you, then I guess they can message you through LinkedIn. That's why we do that.
Definitely.
And we could share the Shakti Women website as well later on. So Siobhan, very welcome to the show. How have you been in the last while? What have you been up to?
Interestingly enough, we've been running a series of workshops for women around self-expression and almost domestic abuse awareness with the Dan Foundation. Those started in January and they finish at the end of July. We've also been piloting our girls club, because whilst we've run a successful girls club summer and Easter program for about 4 or 5 years now, we thought, let's see what happens on a Saturday afternoon if they'll come. If we build it, will they come? So that's had a mixed reception. When I say mixed, the girls that come love it. They can't leave. They won't leave. But we're not getting as much footfall as we'd anticipated. But it's still fun because, again, I'm quite selfish in this. I think, what do my grandkids need? What do my girls need? What would they have had if I could have done stuff back then? So, yes, thank you for sharing that.
It's a beautiful
I've
website.
also relaunched our key program. So thank you. My comms officer, Esther, will be thrilled to hear you say that. But when we started way back in 2006, we were all about business and professional development. We realised we started something that felt like a business networking organisation, and we didn't like it. We wanted to be about continuous growth and development. So we changed our format slightly, but also we brought in this personal stuff because we realized that we are whole women, and to work just on our business or our career development, we're missing a trick, because sometimes we need to invest in our soul, our creativity, our self-love, our self-care. And those things can block our growth. So
I'm just looking
just
down
relaunched
your list of current projects, and it's very long. So
very comprehensive.
That's great.
And that's why I'm working a 7-day week at the moment. So I can't actually wait. There's a couple of them are coming to the end in July, and I'm thinking, I'm just going to
say, Siobhan, I'm just going to say your link is a little bit laggy, but we're still hearing you. So I think our viewers will just put up with that, and can hear you perfectly well. It's just that the picture isn't quite keeping up, but don't worry about that. It's fine.
So that's us. We're just yes, and the Eco Warriors. So I'm just about to put in a bid to Severn Trent Community Foundation for a project called Eco Warriors, because I want more female and young girls eco warriors getting out there, but not just about their personal stuff, about how can we put pressure on local and national government to actually make a commitment to this. We both nationally and locally, we made huge commitments to being a climate, a sincere, so for example in Birmingham, to becoming climate zero by 2024. We've done absolutely nothing about this commitment. And still, you know, people don't know what can be recycled, what can't be recycled, what can they do, how do we make our homes more eco-friendly. All these things are really important to the future of our world, and yet no one is doing anything about it. And until the government starts putting some resource and also some just serious vocal commitment to these issues, nothing will change.
I think you mean,
so
I
yes,
think you
we
mean the local authority isn't doing its kind of leaders, putative leaders for the council are, and the city aren't doing, community group aren't doing their bit. The community groups are Retrofit Boston Heath, for example, Civic Square, have a great awareness, and I know you do personally and professionally. But the leaders in positions of and influencers and decision makers aren't making the decisions that would make a difference.
And making a vocal commitment to these decisions. I was at a conference that, I mean, changing the subject slightly, but I think all these things interact. I was at a conference around race and housing, and all the major housing associations represented, and their thing was, yes, we recognize there's racism in our service. What should we do? Really? You've been running a service for hundreds of years and you don't have the first clue as to how to address this. Read a book, join a webinar, you know, ask a friend, but stop throwing the question back to the Black community to say, how can we solve this? This is your problem. No, it's not. It's everybody's problem.
And I'm guessing you're including the national government. I'm guessing you're including the national government in this kind of critique as well as local government, because I can't imagine things are any better at national level than they are locally.
Totally worse. And sadly, one of our most vocal MPs from the Green Party has stepped down this year, probably because there was her against 60-something other MPs, and she was the only really activist voice. There's a couple of Greens in the room, and even a couple of Greens in the room does make a difference. Yes. But we need to have commitment nationally and locally to these things that are just going to make our communities and our societies better places to live and work. So they're all tied up. And as I said, when we launched, somebody asked me the other day, well, I don't understand, how come you do women one day and then waste another day and then eco stuff another day? It's like, this is my world. I'm a Black woman living on a planet I love.
It's
so
got
yes,
some different dimensions to
important.
it. For goodness, it's not just one thing.
Absolutely,
yes.
absolutely.
We have to, I must admit though, as someone who could be on every single committee and every single activist there is, because I believe in social justice, we have to pick our battles. So yes, I support the development of women and girls. Yes, I campaign for an anti-racist city in Birmingham. But yes, I also want a better world for all of us by looking at climate change. And I was listening to the UN conference recently. I think one of our members shared it on YouTube, the lady from Barbados saying, you know, we are in trouble. We are in serious trouble. And what are we going to do? The worst bit about it is that less than 200 companies internationally cause 70% of the world's problems. It's like, well, we could start with them, you know, it's not rocket.
I think one of the admirable things about Caroline Lucas, the Green MP who's standing down, what she said, she's just looking after herself. She's had, as she said, she's had to fight every battle on every subject as a sole representative of her political party. And on the basis of picking your battles, she can't do that forever. It's not humanly possible. It must have been such a hard road to travel for her. And I really am enormously admiring her for what she's, just the way she's spoken out and just challenged everything that needs to be challenged. Even without
it takes a toll. It takes a toll.
I have to say, I'm admiring as well in this vein the women politicians who are standing down, because they're modeling looking after ourselves is so critical to the work that we do.
Absolutely
You know,
so.
not you don't, you know, we're not here to sacrifice ourselves to die for the cause. We want to live for the cause,
That's right.
and you know, and look after ourselves well in so doing. And Siobhan, I know you're a great model of that as well, because everything that you do is, you know, embraces self-care, looking after ourselves, you know, kind of bringing knowledge, yes, and speaking truth to power, but not in a way where we end up endangering ourselves. You know, we are looking after ourselves at the same time.
One of the things I have said, and one of the things, thank you for sharing that, I totally believe in, is that we have to preserve our energy to be a really powerful advocate for something we believe in. We can't do it all. We're not clans. One of my favorite Shaktiism, we're not clans, do not juggle. Right, focus is our friend. That's another one. I'm just rewriting a workshop I'm delivering tonight, a webinar, and I was remembering some of my key Shaktiisms. But yes, invest in self-care.
Yes.
If you start dropping things, it's because you're doing too much. Step
Yes.
back.
Absolutely. Such
You
an
mentioned
important
that you're
message.
running a webinar tonight, Siobhan, so which brings me neatly on to kind of the subject of the program, really, if you don't mind, about digital.
Oh, when did we last speak about that? I mean, honestly.
So you'll think this is a bit corny, but can you remember when you first started in digital communications? You know, your first computer, your first time online. Can you, you know, remember and recall any of those memories for us now?
Yes, I can. This weird Irish woman came into the Shakti space once and said, "Why aren't you on LinkedIn? Where is your Twitter profile? What are you doing to educate women on the digital space?" And we started, I think this is about 2012. So thank you, Pauline. You brought us up to scratch. We're still not top of our field, but one of the things I remember us saying to the women back then, when we started bringing in different experts from the digital spaces, because everybody was saying, well, what's wrong with letters and the telephone? And we were saying things like, why don't we just use pigeon post? You know, it's fine if you don't want to grow or you don't want to be visible in 10 years' time. But I remember one of my first jobs in my mom's organisation, BASWA, the British Association of Social Workers, my job was to help them with their filing system, and it was all paper-based. It was all on cards. There weren't that many. I think there were computers, but most things were, you know, input on a central computer. And going back even further, when I did my first dissertation, I had to ask one of the admin staff to type it up for me. Everything was on pen and paper. So yeah, I do remember going back. But also, although we suffered as a social enterprise deeply from COVID, because one of our key income generation sources that was always the bedrock of our kind of services was when we're not using our training rooms, we would rent them. But of course, so that income stream disappeared and is barely coming back. But what did happen is we phoned a lot of our members and a lot of the people we supported with hot meals, the old people in North Birmingham, and showed them literally step by step how to go onto Zoom, how to use various digital formats. So I'm still learning, but we are now halfway through trialing our online webinars and are about to launch an online membership program, which I want to be a global membership.
Yes, absolutely. So I mean, that's you talk there about taking people step by step through connecting to Zoom and just getting started. Really, that's really where the idea of our founder on this program, John Popham, came from. This is what he wanted this program to do. I don't think we've quite gone in that direction because others have done that work in perhaps more realistic context than as a YouTube program. But certainly John, who was such an inspiration in many ways about inclusion and digital services that actually work for people and all of that stuff. Everything that you say chimes with everything that he believes. We'd like to try and mention him now and again because he did start the program, and particularly when guests chime so well with what things he was battling for. We like to say well done and keep going.
Absolutely. And it's good to see that kind of people have kept up the platforms and developed them. The women, Siobhan, that you and I met in the early days of Shakti, kind of 11, 12 years ago, they've kept going and they've developed marvelously. And digital has become a way of life for them. Kind of starting from a time when they didn't see how it was relevant. I remember sitting in Shakti rooms, doing like Eventbrite mock-ups for people, kind of inviting people to parties and stuff. And now it's just part of their toolkit, and I'm delighted that they've embraced it and they've run with it. Really, it's they're some of them are far in advance of what I can do now. So what does Shakti look like now? Kind of digitally, compared to the early days.
Well, interestingly enough, it was one of my volunteers who I mentored for a while. She worked for Birmingham University. So she set up our LinkedIn page. And basically that was her give back to me. And we're talking about, maybe a decade ago, 2012.
Yeah.
And it was one day when she said, well, I'm leaving now, but the page is there and have a look. And I looked at it and I realised we've got 20,000 followers on it. And I'm going, when we're barely getting past this 4,000 mark on Facebook. And I said, maybe we need to pay a bit more attention to our LinkedIn page.
Absolutely.
So one, we have greater reach as a result of it. And even when we've got no active programs, we've always tried to do just an inspirational message once or twice a week, a motivational comment, maybe a top tips for this, that and the other. What I want it to look like though, and where I'm moving to, is I do want I want to be working on our monthly newsletter. We've got lots and lots and lots of amazing women out there with their own stories, with their own expertise. And I've been sitting here trying to think of how do we used to do something called Woman to Watch once a month, but I think it should be back, but also on our monthly newsletter. So just reminding people of the amazing work. I had no idea, for example, of the female rangers till you just mentioned it, and I thought, what an amazing story, that should be in our newsletter. So thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're very welcome. It struck me immediately. Yes.
Absolutely. And you also Shakti also has a great WhatsApp group, a very, very lively group with lots of women from all around the world contributing news and views that really makes a difference.
Well, in COVID, we started looking at some of the women's organisations that we had supported over the years. And we realised with a piece of research that a lot of them had gone, but there were still many that were popping up. And interestingly, a funder asked me a couple of months ago, well, what's the point of that? Isn't this a waste of resources having so many? I mean, back in the day when we were there weren't any. My argument is, I can reach who I can reach, and this over 50s Asian women program in Birchfield has a different reach. They are just as relevant as we are. They are connecting people just like we are. There is space. As long as we're not duplicating, as long as we're aware and we're trying to double up on resources, I think the more the merrier if we're going to build this tribe or this army of women, female leaders. So in terms of trying to connect with, we have a footfall of our women girls club, and there are girls there that we are nurturing as just helping them think about how they manage their emotional intelligence, how they manage conflict. And one of the things I've got for this Saturday is showing them the damage of the fast fashion on the planet. So it's only a short thing to start helping them to think for themselves. But at the same time, we can't reach all of them. So I'm glad I'm supporting other women's organisations. So at the moment, we then set up this thing called the Women to Women Consortium. There's 142, probably more because I've lost count, women's organisations. And I thought, how do we best keep them in touch? And we just started this WhatsApp group. So some of the women in that group run their own organisations, some very meaty organisations here in Birmingham. And others are just sole traders delivering an arts project in schools, etc. But yeah, we thought, let's try it. It's working. People are talking.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting, the conversations there.
It's just
I
something that
really enjoy it. Yeah, go on,
it's just
Sweyn.
something that I'm really ignorant about what Shakti means, and I've just looked it up. So I wonder if you agree with this definition that I've found. It means power in Hindu philosophy and theology, and is understood to be the active dimension of the Godhead, the divine power that underlines the Godhead's ability to create the world and display itself. But it's also got a specifically feminine aspect, I think. Is that right?
In essence, again, it was a group of business startups I was supporting in 2005, probably earlier, and I think I was at Waits. So I'm doing this business development stuff, and they said to me, "What is your ambition to start your own business?" And I've got this idea, but I can't think of a name. And they said Shakti means feminine power.
Yeah.
I
actually read the wrong paragraph there. I'm sorry. I read the paragraph I'd rejected as being not right. So much better than I.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, but what I also loved about it is it's the oldest living language, and in Hindi it means to be able. And when we started looking into the actual word, it said stuff like the power comes from within, not from without.
Yeah.
And I thought this is who we are.
Yes.
So feminine power, basically.
From
but
within.
Yes, from within, it's already there. We just have to tap into it. Yeah. But we've since created an acronym, and I think it was I know it was one of our members. Her name was Manjit. She came up with this acronym: S for success, H for happiness. So I'm a successful woman. I choose happiness. I attract abundance. I crave knowledge. I am tenacious. I am inspirational. So, and that absolutely sums us up. That by one of our core values is the continuous pursuit of knowledge and our own growth and development.
Absolutely. And again, the WhatsApp group that you run, the women there, they talk about obviously their work and their how they spend their working hours, but they bring their whole selves. You know, they talk about campaigns and their families and things that mean more to them. And it's a bit like the Rangers thing that Sweyn brought to us earlier. You know, women bring more than just their work to the table. They always bring their whole, well, in my experience, they bring their whole selves, and that's what makes it better when women are involved in helping to run organizations. And
I've always been lucky that I've always worked in organizations with lots of women at all levels, except for a brief period of time about 20 years ago, and you wouldn't choose that brief period of time as the way to run anything, really. Anyway, but it's sometimes we have to say these kind of obvious things, like everyone needs to be involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think again, as a mentor, and having mentored leaders, I mean, I'm talking about big women running big organizations. I constantly see them struggling with boundaries and managing their own energy. So to be able to say, and it happened to me, I was burnt out when I was at the council because I loved what I was doing and I was investing myself in communities. to the point where I had nothing because I was empty. I was burnt. I didn't get the nurture I needed within the family, within the relationship, because, you know, you're a mom. They're not there to nurture you. Your job is to nurture them. And I created Shakti because I needed it. I needed a space.
There's nothing like
and a
enlightened
place.
self-interest. Yay.
Absolutely.
And I'm very grateful for that, I must say. Siobhan, we want to just cover a few stories before we close, but we want to also let people know where's the best place to find you online when they inevitably want to follow up. So what's your favorite platform for people to find you on?
Subscribe to our newsletter on our website, because that will guarantee that once a month in the first week of every month, you'll at least get to find out about what we're doing throughout that month. But the other place is Eventbrite seems to be our biggest platform at the moment, because we've had quite a lot of programs running on and offline. So when people search Shakti Women, they can see probably about 10 live programs. So I'm online tonight with my signature workshop, Design the Life You Love, which tells the story of my burnout and why I decided to start working on designing a love that meant something, a life that meant something to me, but also gave me back what I needed.
Excellent. And I know you've got another event as well. So you're going to be a busy woman this evening, as usual, running around, setting the world to rights. Yeah.
Setting the world to rights. I will wave at people at the AGM and then run into a room to deliver my work.
Still time to sign up for the Brig AGM tonight if you're in Birmingham, and we can highly recommend it. It's at Soho House. Okay, Sweyn, you wanted to show a bit from the minimum digital living standards video.
Yes, we can skip to that.
Are we going to run that? Yeah, I think that would be
how long? Yes, we can. You can use time for that, because it kind of links quite nicely in with some of the things that Siobhan has been talking about. I went to a webinar run by the Digital Poverty Alliance someday recently, and it was just absolutely brilliant. It was a presentation, a short presentation, and a much longer discussion, which I was like, led by one of the senior people at Digital Poverty Alliance, whose name I've forgotten. I'm sorry, but
Simeon Yates.
No, not him.
Oh, sorry.
The woman who was introducing the thing was their director of something, DPA's director of something, and she was very good. But the real star of the show, as you say, was Simeon Yates from the University of Liverpool, who is working together with people from the University of Loughborough on defining a thing called the minimum digital living standard. Now, I'll show you their website if I can do two things at once. What were we saying about multitasking and being not very good at it? Here I am.
We're not clowns.
I'm not clowns. Well, let's not go down that road. So there we are. There's the website for the minimum digital living standard. And once you understand what it is, that rather clumsy phrase is easier to actually remember, because MDLS is a minimum standard for having enough digital stuff to live. So they've defined this for the use case of urban children with families, and I'll just go down. Am I sharing that?
You can see slides.
That's good. It's not so much. That's pages of a PDF. So if we could just go down to the summary. Now, this is just about the best single page of stuff I think I've ever seen in this arena. You can tell that they've put a lot of research effort into defining this. I'm not going to go into it in any detail, but they've got three basic categories of things. There's digital goods and services that we need, there's practical and functional skills that we need, and there's the understanding and managing of digital risk. And everything that we've ever said on this program about digital inclusion is on this page, as far as I can see. And the other thing I liked was, I don't know if you can see under the middle column and the right-hand column, there's numbers with different colors, and those are the times of one's life when one needs those skills by.
Yeah.
Anything that's got a 1, you need that in preschool. Anything that's got a 3, you need that late in primary school. Anything that's a 5, you need by the end of late secondary school. And apparently one of the things they discovered was that working with families who met and, more importantly, didn't meet what they felt was a minimum digital living standard, one of the things that they found was that universally people believed that these skills have to be all in place, but to be of best use, it's as you leave school that you need to have these skills by then and no later. So that was interesting. So just very briefly, I thought I would play what I thought was the absolute core of what the minimum digital living standard really is. Like I said, I've got so many windows open, I doubt I'll find it in the time we've got left, but let's have a go. Oh, I know what I did. Yes, we're not trying to be the BBC. We haven't said that for a while. Right, so this is a clip of Simeon Yates from Liverpool University explaining a misconception about what they were trying to do, which I thought just went really well. Now, if you can't hear this, Pauline and Siobhan, please tell me and I'll restart it. But I think you should be able to. Can you see the?
You see
am I
Elizabeth
sharing the
Anderson
right
on
thing?
screen,
Yes,
yeah.
that's good. So I'll start it and put it onto full screen.
Roger has
Yes.
pushed back a little. He doubts that some of the elements apply to a realistic minimum. Is not having Netflix really a fundamental deficit? I can declare I don't have Netflix myself. Do you think that that is skewing the MDLS at all, or do you
think we need to be really careful about what we mean by a minimum here, and I'm going to push back against Roger. If you look at the minimum income standards, it will say things about having enough income such that you've got the mobility that you need, whether that's ownership of a car or use of public transport, etc., to be able to engage in society. We are not talking a minimum here that's just enough. I mean, the thing in the minimum income standard is they get critiqued. Oh, why have you got a television in there? Why have you got this in there? And their point is, right, we're not talking about a minimum so that people don't starve, because that basically is a very, very minimal food bank and no other food. You know, it's not a minimum income standard such that you're not dead tomorrow. And as a minimum digital living standard, it's not a minimum such that you've just got enough to fill in your universal credit form and, you know, book a doctor's appointment. It's a minimum such that below which consequence follow. As to the Netflix thing, I'll give you an example from our Survivors of Modern Slavery. One of the first examples that was like a case study presented to us when we were putting the proposal together was from a charity that works directly with women who have been trafficked. I leave you to think about why the women have been trafficked. Rescued from those circumstances with a child, right? Lockdown happens. They've got 1 gig of data on a smartphone. They are told to do their counselling, psychology counselling support on the smartphone. They use up all their data in one counselling session. They have no contact with anything. Their child's got no whatever. The child is in school, right? So when, you know, they get provided with a dong, some data and a tablet. They're not meeting our minimum digital living standard at this point, right? When asked what were the benefits of having the tablet, the first answer was not, I can do my counselling session or I can get onto services. It was, my child has got access to like CBeebies content. They can watch that. When they go into school, they don't get bullied. Right. It's about a minimum living standard. It's not a minimum survival standard, and it's not a minimal standard such that you can be functional as far as the state's concerned. It's to live a very basic life you value so that your child is included and you are included. So though many of us might say, well, Freeview BBC is more than enough, it's not. If that's all you've got and you end up bullied at school, or you can't talk to people at work, or the content you want to watch, which isn't in English, is not on BBC. So that was what we say, a basic subscription package, right, choose your pick. It could be the BBC, which is free, or it could be Netflix that's got other language content on it. Right. That's
Excellent.
the way it's supposed to work, is to get you to that. You're fine. Maybe that's the phrase. And that's why it's a minimum, because below it, consequences follow. And above it, hopefully they don't.
Brilliant. That's
I don't
great,
think,
Sweyn.
I don't think
I
I've
can see
had
why you were
5
impressed.
minutes. I don't think, well, it's less than 5 minutes, more like 4. I don't think I've had a better 4-minute, short-ish, but detailed description of what we mean. And it's kind of astonishing that it's taken this long to get to the point of actually properly, with a bit of research backing, to actually define it. But at least we've made it now. Hurrah. It always brought me, it did bring me to tears the first time I heard that. It still makes me feel quite emotional, I must admit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
I think we can all relate to that.
I think it speaks to our values, our humanist values, though, because a lot of people in today's society believe that if you're unemployed, we don't want you to starve, but that's all we want for you. We want you to live in one bedroom without a TV. We want you to have, a basic cover for your kids, but that's it. Now, to me, that's not a humanist perspective. And that's, again, why I look at the Green Party manifesto, because the whole economic formula is not based on growth. It's based on need. And when we talk about quality of survival, we're not talking just about surviving so that you've got an outfit to wear to your next job interview. We talk about quality of life. What about the people who can't contribute? What about, they're still human. They're still people. And our society's all upside down. Crazy.
Equally on the environmental side, the alternative to doing what we're doing now is not starving, shivering in the dark. It's just there are other alternatives that we can build and do if we do it properly. I need to name check Elizabeth Anderson, who was the chair of that session from the DPA, because I felt really embarrassed that I couldn't remember her name previously. So there we are, sorted that one out.
Yeah, great. Well, we had Paul Finnis on from the Digital Poverty Alliance last week, Siobhan, and he was brilliant and he wants to come on again. So we will and we have other Digital Poverty Alliance colleagues who've been on the show before, so we will be having more and more from them, because they just speak the absolute truth. They you yourself attended the digital NNS launch event that I ran, and you saw Freddie Queck, and his infographic about digital inclusion, and Kat Dixon's periodic table.
Freddie's infographic is the second best I've ever seen.
So we do like an infographic, and I'm sure Shakti Women, I know Shakti Women has done brilliant research as well in the pink paper about women and power and poverty and politics and all that. So I know that you're on top of that matter as well. We're sadly run out of time, but thank you very much for joining us today. It's been fascinating as usual to have you as a guest, and I'm delighted you were able to join us on the Dr. Tech Show. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you for inviting me. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Bye. Wow.
Okay, we're